Chapter 4, Ancient Egypt and Kush. Section 4, the New Kingdom and Kush. Hatshepsut was the first woman pharaoh. Now, how the story goes is that her father was Thutmose I, and she married her brother or stepbrother, Thutmose II, and Thutmose II already had a child named Thutmose III, who became her stepson. And when Thutmose II died, theoretically, the throne should have gone to Thutmose III. But he was too young to take over the throne. So Hatshepsut first served as a regent. A regent is just someone who rules in the place of someone else until they're old enough. Now, eventually, Hatshepsut will declare the throne for herself, making herself the pharaoh. Now, back in these days, women weren't really supposed to be pharaohs. So she dressed, if you will, like a male pharaoh. So you saw her in all the traditional wear that a male would wear, like the fake beard and the headdress, when she was out in the public. Of course, when she was in her own house, she would not dress like that, but when she was out in the public, she made herself look as manly as possible. Now, as pharaoh, Hatshepsut wanted to make Egypt richer through trade rather than war. And she wanted to mark all her great accomplishments around Egypt by building these things called obelisks. They are a pillar-shaped monument, and it recorded all her great deeds on them. So you can kind of see from this picture what an obelisk looks like. And on the side, this is kind of a close-up view of one of the parts of the obelisk that would identify some of her deeds. This is Hatshepsut right here. Hatshepsut will disappear after 15 years on the throne. And then finally Thutmose III took over. Now Thutmose III was really angry at the fact that Hatshepsut ruled. He should have been the pharaoh. That's how he felt. And he was a spoiled little brat about it.
I should be the pharaoh, darn it.
Anyway,
I hate you.
that's how he would talk. So when he becomes the pharaoh, he destroys all records of Hatshepsut's reign, trying to erase her from the history books. Now we are up to a reforming pharaoh named Akhenaten. Akhenaten, who you see in the picture, made Egyptians worship only one god called Aten or Aton. Now, like we've learned, the Egyptians have many different gods and goddesses. When Akhenaten becomes the pharaoh, he makes them get rid of all those pharaohs and worship one god called Aten. He closed all the temples of the other gods, and priests lost some power. That got covered up there. His new way of thinking affected art, which started to show pharaohs more realistically instead of looking like a god. They were shown more realistically rather than perfect. Now, when Tutankhamun becomes the pharaoh, he will change back to the old gods. The advisors that he had hired convinced him to reject Aton and bring back all the old gods. A powerful pharaoh named Ramses II will take over in 1279 BC, and he will rule for 66 years, which, for back in these days, is a really long time. He wanted to make Egypt more powerful through war and expanded the empire. He negotiated the world's first peace treaty with the Hittites, and he had a city and temples built to honor him. Abu Simbel was that city, and you can see You can see the temple here that he built, right here. This is a close-up view of one of the Ramses statues. After Ramses' death, Egypt declined. The Persians will conquer Egypt. Alexander the Great, who was the king of the Greeks, will eventually conquer it. We're not going to talk about Nubia and Kush, these civilizations. As you can see from the map, Nubia is around that S area of the Nile River that we've talked about. Kush is in that same kind of area. Kush was a version of that. When Egypt ruled Nubia, because of course Egypt has come down to conquer this area, a cultural exchange will occur, meaning both sides will adopt different clothing, the royal rituals, hieroglyphics, and pyramids from each other. So you kind of have two cultures who are kind of blending together. A Kushite king named Pia invaded Egypt and conquered it. When he conquered it, he united Egypt and Kush and formed the 25th dynasty in Egyptian history. But he did not live in Egypt. He stayed down in his capital, which was called Napata, which is right here. Napata became a center of trade. In 671 BC, the Assyrians invaded and conquered Egypt, and that ended the Kushite rule. That is the end of section 4.